Hey everyone, welcome to episode 71 of the MIamitech pod. I'm Cesar Fernandez and I'm joined by Brian Breslin. Maria and Will are out this week. We have no guests, but we're gonna cover the news. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been long overdue. We haven't had a Miami and sort of tech industry focused pod in a while that wasn't about a specific guest. So I'm all for it. And there's been a lot of things going on, some funny, some sad, and some just ridiculous, So I think we've got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's dive right in.
Yeah, look, let's start here. This is a big kind of national slash international topic that I think is going to have some significant effects in Miami. There's a lot of people, specifically, building blockchain companies in the crypto, crypto investors, crypto traders based in Miami. And this week, we got wind of the fact that the Justice Department has charged a ex Coinbase employee and a couple of his associates with insider trading. So he is essentially, being charged for, illegal trading of securities, which has significant implications. But the Justice Department is basically saying, look, our case here is that you're illegally trading securities and, wire fraud and all of these other charges. But the turn of events that got this employee and his buddies, or relatives to this point is that he was essentially letting people know before certain tokens were going to be listed on Coinbase. And they would buy a bunch of them in massive quantities, and then they would list on Coinbase. Their value would go up because the volume would go up, and then they'd sell and make money.
Right. And to be clear, some guy on Twitter, I think at Kobe or something like that, was the one who brought this up because he saw them using the same wallet over and over, and it was always coincided 24 hours before something got listed. And so Twitter comes to our rescue again, and could have a cascading effect on this whole industry.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
let's and to be clear, this information for folks who are in the industry, you could have seen this coming as far as what's going to be on Coinbase, because there's sites that show this publicly. So this, I don't know if this predated those sites existing, but this is yeah.
Yeah, look, this feels like a significant moment in crypto, right? There was always this question as to whether, um, what the regulations were going to be. There's always a lot of evangelists in the industry that were like, look, there is not a need for regulation. Everything's transparent. Everything's on the blockchain. But at the same time, you had a lot of shady dealings, right? You had large institutional investments taking your investors taking major positions in cryptocurrencies. You had some of this happening where you had the insiders of projects get really, really, really rich. You had rug pools, all these things. But I think it's a really, significant moment, because if the government wins
Mm-hmm.
and a federal court holds that the dozen and a half cryptocurrencies that they're alleging are securities. They're not saying every single cryptocurrency on Coinbase is a security, but I think they singled out 18 or 19, something around there. And they win. I mean, that's the law of the land, right? It's going to have rippling effects for everybody. Obviously, I thought it was interesting the DOJ's strategy here, where they're going after an employee. They're starting this case rather than suing Coinbase and saying you're facilitating the transactions of illegal securities. They're going after. They're kind of making that claim by way of an insider trading case, which is really, really smart for a bunch of reasons from my point of view. Number one is this employee, Coinbase is probably, I saw their statement. They're like, well, we don't allow people to like crypto's not a security period.
Right.
But they, you know, my bet is that they're going to like distance themselves from the employee. The employee's probably fired, and they're going to say like, hey, we're not going to defend you because we're just the platform here, right? Like they have to protect their corporate interests. They're going to take that stance that like, if Martha Stewart is insider trading on E-Trade, that doesn't make E-Trade liable for the insider trading, right? That makes the trader liable. They'll probably take that same stance. And the this employee, I have no idea whether he has the resources to go up against the SEC and the Department of Justice, but if he doesn't
I
defend
mean,
himself in a significant way, like this could go south for the industry really fast if a federal court holds that a bunch of crypto currency are deemed securities.
I think this is something worth unpacking. Like, we need to get like a crypto attorney, like whether it's Justin Wales or Drew Hinkes or one of our friends to like weigh in on this, because there's also like piercing corporate veil, defenses here at play, and also the whole social media Section 230 defense. Like, are you a platform? Are you a market maker? Are you a broker? Yada yada yada. Like, all these things could be at risk, right? And so this is like throwing a grenade in the middle of this market, and then shrapnel going everywhere. So like,
I can see this going to the Supreme Court, right? I can
yeah.
see, if a lower court holds that they are insider trading illegal securities and those securities were all tokens on Coinbase, like, man, that is like, the entire industry has a vested interest in
Mhm.
that not being held
Yeah.
in the case. And you can see a lot of people that are going to defend this, jump in with amicus briefs, all of that, and try to go all the way to the Supreme Court and try to get a favorable opinion here.
I mean, whether or not this guy has the individual resources to defend this on his own, there's going to be a lot of corporate and wealthy backers throwing money behind his legal fund,
Legal
right?
defense fund.
Right? Like, because there's so many billions of dollars on the
Yeah,
line, Someone like Sam Bankman-Fried or any of the or Brian Armstrong might have to dip into their own private reserves to, you know, to
yeah.
help this dude out that they otherwise would have washed their hands of.
But this is why it's such a good move from DOJ. Is like, I mean, at the end of the day, he was insider trading, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
was
No, look,
like
I'm not defending the guy.
the
I mean,
conduct,
yeah,
like they picked the right case. Like the
yeah,
dude was doing shady things
yeah,
on by front running trades, essentially, where he would like tell his buddies like, hey, this is about to pop because we're about to list it on Coinbase. Nobody had that public information, and then it did. And look, it's the irony, of course, is that this is like perfectly legal in the public markets. Right? Like, you had like market makers like Citadel
yeah.
and others that the whole like Robinhood payment for order flow
Yeah.
scandal, where they were essentially giving the order flow to other institutions to trade before the orders would go through. And
hmm
I don't
No,
know.
look, this is like straight up Paul Giamatti, like Chuck Rhodes out of Billions character, like surgical precision on the DOJ's part. And I think it's interesting that there's like a lot of the big players in the crypto industry have been pushing for more regulation because they know it'll like build them
It's
moats and
smart.
it'll also protect them, right?
It's
You know,
inevitable, right? Like you're not gonna. It, this isn't gonna like. I think the moment that crypto moved from a bunch of people like holding this obscure concept of a digital currency on thumb drives, like into major hedge funds and banks holding, hundreds of millions of dollars and if not billions of dollars in crypto, like that is when the question of like, is this going to be regulated was like answered, right? There's no way that,
yeah, yeah,
JP
yeah.
Morgan Chase can put 1% of its AUM in crypto or whatever it is. And like the SEC is like, okay, cool. No problem. That's unregulated.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the reverb effect will be, whether or not a lot of these big funds that did take positions in this have to then unwind them, and that could have a price chilling effect. But
Yeah,
yeah,
my take is like, this is not going to affect Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that. It's going to affect
mhm.
some of these like, questionable stable coins, or questionable like, Dogecoin, or whatever like that. Had no other basis than a means like that. Like the whole point of them was like there's an expect. It's a gamble, right? Like there's an expectation that it will go up in price and meet the securities test.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think we could talk about this for a lot longer if we wanted, but there's other NFT and crypto related news in the city of Miami that I think we should touch on.
Yep.
Um, there was a recent announcement, what, yesterday, I guess it was, between City of Miami, Time Magazine, MasterCard, and Salesforce.
Yep. The city of Miami announced that there's going to be a partnership between those entities to create this like NFT project. They're going to unveil a collection of 5,000 NFTs in partnership with those organizations that will essentially raise money. So it's going to be designed by 56 local Miami artists representing the 56 square mile area of the city. And there's two things that are interesting about this. Like, one is that the funding, like the funds generated, are going to go to local businesses and are going to go to, I would imagine, Venture Miami and local projects that people care about. And then the other piece is that there's going to be like some utility around this, where in partnership with those brands, they're going to unlock a lot of like, VIP style experiences and whatnot. I think they should sell, and this is definitely the county, it's not the city, but like if there's a way to buy an NFT that gets you in front of the line at the DMV, I'm all for it. What do you think?
I can't comment on that
As
as
the
an
advisor to the
advisor
mayor
on the
Daniela
mayor's team, but
Williams.
I will take it under advisement and bring it up at our next meeting.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I think, look, I think, as like you and I were talking about offline, I think this is an interesting play. Like, I'm kudos to the Venture Miami team for like being innovative and bringing new stuff to the forefront of local government. And like we were talking offline, we were saying how this could also be an interesting way to start doing direct funding of projects by like concerned local citizens who want to put more money into parks or schools or whatever it may be, and don't have. There's no way that Keith Raboy can come in and write a check to Dade County Public Schools for a specific thing. Like,
Yeah, they're
or maybe there is just
there
mired in
is
red tape.
there's a lot of red tape around it, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
There's like all of this, like the ethics laws and gift prohibitions and et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
And um, which, to take a step back, right, and to walk listeners, a lot of people know this, but like government is inherently inefficient, right? Like the revenue stream comes from tax revenue, then it goes into this big pot of money, and then that pot of money funds essential services like police and fire and all of that. But then it also funds like largely bloated capex, all of it. Then at the end of the road, there is an allocation process in the rest of those funds that will go to projects that are largely important to politicians, right? To commissioners, to the mayor, et cetera. And that process, that budget process, is one of the more, like perverted things in American government, right? There's a ton of lobbyists involved. There's a bunch of interest. There's a lot of contracts that go to vendors and all of that. And by the time that like, you see the dollar that for every dollar that you put in tax revenue to like the thing that you care about being funded, there is like an incredible amount of dilution in between. And having a mechanism for, and it's unclear that this is what the scope of this project is going to be, but having a mechanism by which like residents can buy an NFT Like for instance, if I wanted to buy like a City of Miami seawall NFT, and it's like a picture of Biscayne Bay, like done by a local artist, and the art itself is valuable, but the funding, a piece of it, not just initially, but on a recurring basis after every secondary, trade of that NFT, goes to fund, like seawalls on Biscayne Bay. Like I, as a concerned resident for like sea level rise, can invest in that project. Right? Like that would be a really, really cool utility to see out of this. The underlying, right? Like, flood mitigation, like, road raising in Miami Beach. Like there's so many things that, could be funded, or even local businesses, right? Like there is a, um, grant programs and things that boost up our local economy, but for the most part, it's again really inefficient, super diluted after a budget process, and doesn't always go into the right hands, right? And this is a cool way of breaking down all of those barriers, I think.
Yeah, look, and above all, this is a great way for people to have feel like they're getting more direct involvement in local government. Because local impact, it's sort of we're fighting against apathy and frustration from a lot of citizens. That they don't think that they can participate in our government, right? Because it feels like you're disconnected from a lot of these things. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think this is a great, initiative. We'll see how it goes. Maybe in 6 months, after they launch this at NFT Basel or Art Basel, like we have Francis or someone from Venture Miami team on to talk about sort of like how it went and like where they're going to see the money go and all that stuff. But
totally.
I think on that note, like there's other local political things that we need to cover that are really important for our listeners to know about, right? Like the
Yeah,
upcoming election.
that's a good public service announcement. This August 23rd, there's a primary election in the state of Florida. In if you are a registered voter and you're a part of one of the two major political parties, you'll have way more things on the ballot, because this is a means to selecting nominees for political parties, and you have everything from a governor's race this year all the way down to the state senate and state representative, and like judicial candidates and issues on the ballot. I recommend that everybody go on the Miami-Dade County Supervisor of Elections website and go get your sample ballot. Right now, you can do a customizable sample ballot where you type in your address and it basically shoots a PDF of exactly what's on your ballot, so that you don't wait till last minute, and then like be one of those people that leave 2/3 of the ballot empty. You can go all the way down and really research these candidates and these primary issues, see who's crazy and who's not, all of that. So August 23rd election. If you're one of these people that are like in New York, or like jet setting in Europe like Maria, and you need a vote by mail ballot, you don't have to be physically present to participate in the election. You can request a vote by mail ballot. There's also early voting, in-person early voting 2 weeks before election day. But the vote by mail ballot deadline to request it is August 13th.
Yeah, and I think one thing to keep in mind for folks who are new to the community or haven't been active in voting at the local level is that a lot of the impact that you as individuals can have is at the local and state level. There's like electing the right people will help us prevent crazy, misguided projects from getting promoted or floated, like this penal colony on Virginia Key for homeless people that was
Oh
recently
yeah, we
floated.
need to talk about that. That's
Yeah, like
man.
I'm pretty sure it was Joe Carroyo who's the one who was the one who proposed this. And I
So
don't know if I've
Joe Correa, for the listeners, is a City of Miami commissioner.
yeah, District 3, which I think is Little Havana and a couple other neighborhoods, right? So many of you may or may not live in his district. He's been a longtime fixture of Miami politics since the 90s when he was city mayor at one point, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
seems like forever.
yeah. Um, Poster child for term limits. Let me just leave that there. But yeah, so this crazy ass plan that was floated and was in the Miami Herald the other day was they wanted to remove all the homeless people from downtown Miami and put them in a tent camp next to the sewage treatment plant on Virginia Key, because Virginia Key is an island, for those of you who don't know, on the way to Key Biscayne, is technically in city of Miami boundary,
Yep.
and is unpopulated except for, Lolita the killer whale, a high school, and a public park, right? And maybe a marina and a restaurant or something like that, right? But this effing stupid plan was proposed, and actually, like, there may be city resources dedicated to exploring this, which is even more egregious waste of
Correct.
money than, you know um and I can't imagine for the life of me any Key Biscayne resident not fighting this because they don't want to drive past a homeless camp on the way to
Yeah.
work.
I mean, look, my take on this. So first, we should tell the listeners that that it didn't pass, but it was like a roller coaster of events where the plan was rejected, but then the city commission approved a plan to do a tiny home pilot program for housing homeless in that area.
Oh, so the
So
tiny homes are going to go on Virginia Key?
I think that's essentially the pilot program.
I
I
mean, that's
dropped
just
the
gonna. I mean, putting people right next to a sewage treatment plant is not going to be helpful, especially when a lot of these folks depend on services that are offered in downtown Miami or in,
right.
like, the
Yeah,
city proper.
exactly. Like
So
we could debate how to solve a homelessness issue. It's not easy, right? It's
yeah,
certainly not a money problem, right? Like the San Francisco Office of Homelessness has a $1 billion budget, and every single year the number of their homelessness problem just compounds, right? So it's like not a money problem; it's a complicated issue. But I think we could all agree that like shipping them to an island is not the right move.
yeah. I mean, look, if we had an island that had no bridge, they would have suggested that island, right? And it would have been like Alcatraz for homeless people. And like that's just look. There's this unfortunate trend going on at the local, state, national level of this, like, lack of empathy towards our fellow humans that we need to, like, get ahead of. And
Yeah,
I know there's this bizarre libertarian thread that is common in the tech industry because people feel like this doesn't affect me, but it doesn't affect you until it does. And just because it doesn't affect you doesn't mean it doesn't matter. So, like, that's my 2 second soapbox on, like, care about other people.
yeah, fair. Moving on, Brian. Are we in a recession?
I mean, look, I'll do my best to channel the spirit of Friedberg on here and say, by some definitions, yes, but by most definitions, no. I mean, everything seems to be getting more expensive, and inflation is definitely something we have to be concerned about. But there's still job growth. The more concerning factor is, like we had talked about offline, which was like consumer credit is going through the roof. People are borrowing
Yeah,
and spending more than they have at record levels, and they're burning through their savings, right? Their nest eggs and safety nets are gone. And
yeah,
so but the crazy thing with the way our economy is built is you need to have forward momentum, and if you lose forward momentum, you fall on your face, right? And so, but that's a problem with all capitalist economies, and we're constantly trying to, like, calibrate which inputs and outputs do we really sort of, like, squeeze on or dial up or dial down in order to, like, maintain that balance going forward.
yeah. Look, I think what you just said on consumer credit or consumer debt levels is the most alarming thing, right? So, let's say that the factors of the economy right now, you have like, you know, low unemployment, right? You have, you know, growth, but not like, well, technically you have declining growth, but you still have a strong economy overall, right? And you have a high like inflation that is kind of like putting that downward pressure on the entire system. And a lot of people, I think, my personal belief, are like in denial right now, or in a recession, are like looking to, some of these metrics and not all of them, and saying, oh, well, it's like a supply side recession, right? Where the reason that we have less than stellar economic growth is because you have this big kind of like supply chain issues that lead to the inflation. And therefore, the whole thing looks like, it's not where it needs to be. I disagree with that. Like, I really believe that, as like Ray Dalio says, there's these like, debt cycles, and we're just on the downturn of the debt cycle, right? Like, we have very high inflation. It did not help that neither party in Washington has, for the last, you know, 2 decades, cared about the federal debt. And our
Mm-hmm.
solution is to spend more money than we bring in as a government. And, you can say like, sure, but as long as we're growing, it'll eventually, like all
Right,
kind of
but
balance
but
itself out. But I think it's like crazy. Like, we have $30 trillion of
yeah,
debt.
I mean, look, the whole debt is based on the assumption that we'll continue growing at 3 to 4% a year and just outpace inflation, right? Like, at some point, we have to sort of take a hard look in the mirror and say, like, is this always sustainable? Like, I don't know. You could look at individual companies as an example, right? Like, you see a company already valued at 2 trillion. Like, how likely is it for it to be a $3 trillion company? Like, can that be supported by any like sane or sensible numbers, right? And so the same thing could be
Yeah.
said about our economy, right? Like,
There's two things that I think are good things that are coming out of everyone's like paranoia that we're entering into like, significant economic downturn. Number one is that startup founders, led by a lot of VCs, led by certain, like, you know, there are a lot of VCs that think, that are well versed in macro, in the macroeconomic outlook of the country, and are just like saying, hey, like, for a long time, we've had some on the podcast, right? Like Keith Boy, for a long time back in October of last year, saying, hey, like, inflation's out of control. This is getting crazy. Like, we're going to start seeing high interest rates, and it's going to bring the whole thing down. But every startup founder that I know, or every operator in a company, is just like tightening up their belts. And the era of like drunken sailor spending, we're just going to like throw money at growth, is over. And now everyone's like, all right, how do we run a profitable business? Which I think is like cool.
I
Right?
mean,
Like,
look, that was the like understanding cash flow, right? That was something
yeah,
that
yeah,
all Miami startups had to focus on first and foremost before there was this like surge in the last 2 years of capital availability. But like, I don't know how much of this in like VCs sort of reassessing the valuations that they're investing at and all that is all of them being geniuses, or more of them just sort of sheep following sheep, or lemmings following lemmings. Because to be honest, being outside of the top 50 VCs, the vast majority are just doing what someone else did,
yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
so
Like,
and
there's a
that,
lot of that.
yeah, that could be said in
Um,
a lot of industries too,
Now,
but
the second thing that came out of this, it's worth mentioning because there's definitely a Miami tie-in, is that because of, this record high inflation, we are we are seeing certain goods get really, really expensive, and one casualty of high inflation is the Choco Taco, Brian Breslin.
I mean, we're seeing a hero that we didn't expect come out of the woodworks here in Miami, right? With our local VC celebrity, Alexis Ohanian stepping up to the plate,
Yeah.
right?
So for those that didn't catch this, Klondike announced this week that it is no longer going to be producing the Choco Taco. A big blow to a lot of people who grew up, eating the sugary snack dessert, in their childhoods. But man, what a guy. Reddit co-founder and VC Alexis Ohanian stepped in. His response to an article here, or he tweeted this to Unilever, the parent company. He said, "I'd like to buy the rights to your Choco Taco and keep it from melting away from future generations' childhoods. I can't let this happen. Not to America. Not on my watch."
I mean, if that's not the ultimate rich guy flex, I don't
That's
know
a
what
fact.
is, right? Like, this is a perfect billionaire cocktail party fodder of like, oh, do you remember, what a Dunkaroos, right, from your
Yep.
childhood? Well, I just bought them, and I have a factory down the street from my house that is making them just for me, and I'm also turning it into a business, right? Like,
I mean, why not? Right?
yeah.
Like, they're in many ways like these. There are a lot of people that have like spun off brands, bought the rights to them, and like built them up just based on the nostalgia factor alone.
I mean, this seems like the perfect opportunity for someone to spin up a nostalgia DAO, right? And raise some money behind it, because like there's only a few people like the Ken Griffins of the world who could sort of write that check wholeheartedly, like out of their own assets. But nostalgia DAO, think of all the brands that have come and gone that a bunch of what millennials and Gen Xers who have some extra cash from their who would throw some money down for this.
Yeah, Toys R Us, another one. Like Blockbuster. Like if you did like if you bought the distress assets of Blockbuster from whatever person bought it from a bankruptcy court, and like you know propped up a Netflix competitor overnight that undercut
Oh,
them on price, like
absolutely, absolutely, right? You
yeah,
know,
there's plays there where you can. I mean, there's brand value for sure. It's
yeah.
not zero, right? Like these things are, you know, and the nostalgia factors through the roof. At a minimum, you'll get a ton of earned media of it, and like maybe build a brand off of it. I don't know,
I mean, this
or
could
rebuild a brand.
there could be an interesting like direct to consumer e-commerce play here too. Like where you're basically scouring all the sort of the wreckage of bankruptcy court for brands like Tab and Fun Dip or whatever other things that like boomers and all these other people over 30
I
miss.
think, dude, I think Fun Dip's still a thing.
Is it? Okay. Well, I'm just saying things that I remember from when I was a little kid. Remember candy cigarettes? Those are definitely not a thing anymore,
Yeah, that's
right?
right. Like cigarettes are barely a thing anymore.
Right, right. So I think there's an opportunity here for so whoever's listening and wants to start the next unicorn,
Yeah.
there's an opportunity for a nostalgia DAO slash
What
roll up company that's pure e-commerce. You know,
Yeah, back to Alexis Ohanian. Like, what a flex! What
yeah,
what a
yeah.
move! What an American hero! We need him on the pod.
We do. So this is our public call out to anybody who's friends with Alexis, or if Alexis, if you're listening to this and you're a fan, like we assume you are, there's an open invite to join us. We'll do an in person or Zoom over video pod with you. We'll even come to your house, and eat Choco tacos with you, because I assume you have 2 freezers full in your garage. You know,
Amazing.
so yeah, so the offer's out there. As well, look, and speaking of other Miami area billionaires, there was an interesting real estate move this past week, right? Down in Coral Gables or Pinecrest or somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, this was wild. The Bezos parents, Mama and Papa Bezos, bought, according to the Real Deal, $74 million for two side by side mansions in Coral Gables, where they are, upgrading their home. Long time Miami Dade County residents. Mama and Papa Bezos are making moves.
I'm curious if this was like their own money because they were early Amazon investors, or this was Jeff like throwing down some spare couch cushion money to buy a couple upgrade his parents' houses.
Well, if they were if they were early Amazon investors, they could afford it
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah,
I gotta imagine, there was like a few bips of founder shares that went
yeah,
to Jeff Bezos' parents.
yeah,
So yeah, they could probably afford it themselves. But if not, like if you're Jeff Bezos, buy mom and dad two mansions in Miami. Why not?
yeah, yeah. His and
You would
hers.
not be here without them.
Right, right. Yeah, and he went to high school just down the street from there, so at Palmetto High. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what he does or what they do with this. Do they build one like 50,000 square foot mega mansion? Combine the lots, or do they live in squalor in their two 18,000 square foot houses or whatever it is?
Yeah, one could be a guest home.
That's true. When little Jeffy shows up to come visit, right?
Sure. Do you think he's going to run for president?
Oh, that's a good question. I think so. I mean, why not? Right? Like he's sort of semi-retired. He's got billions. He started shit posting, which is step number one in becoming president, right?
I I don't like. I mean, if he ran as a Democrat, I don't know his party affiliation actually, but if he ran as a Democrat, I don't believe in today's day and age a billionaire can win the Democratic nomination for president.
Um,
Right? We saw the absolute like knifing of Mike Bloomberg's presidential candidacy by the left of his party.
yeah,
He was attacked for every single thing that he did as chairman of Bloomberg and
yeah.
his company and like yeah
I mean, I think he could. I mean, could he be the Ross Perot of 2024? And run as an independent? Maybe. I mean, there's so many there's so much baggage in worker treatment and things like that like I don't know if the far left would support him, but a lot of centrists might.
yeah I think that we're probably gonna. I mean, to your point on Ross Perot, we're due for a third party candidate who's like serious
Hmm.
and not 1% of the electorate serious, but
Yeah,
like double digit, like change the outcome of an election. And if you're on the stage and you get lucky, and one of the other two candidates implode, and like the winds shift your way, maybe. But yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah. No, I mean it's
especially how we're seeing a really rapid departure from political parties in general,
hmm
right?
yeah,
It's apathy is not just like, oh, I'm going to sit home in the election. Apathy is like both parties suck, and I'm going to become no party affiliation voter and vote in every election and vote however I feel like and for whoever the candidates I think are going to rock the boat the most, and like with the right timing he could catch a
but
wave.
I mean I think I read somewhere that's like 40 something percent of the voting population is now no party affiliation, right? But
Yeah, in Florida, it is the fastest growing segment of the electorate.
right, but then like you're seeing a lot of states shifting to closed primaries because of that, right? And so
Yeah,
then we're getting further and further into rule by the minority, right? Where a smaller and smaller fraction of the people are deciding who are the final candidates, and then you know deciding the future of our states. So
yeah, crazy.
yeah,
All right, man.
cool. Well, this was
Let's leave
fun.
it there. This was good. This was
Ho-
good.
Hopefully we get to an invite to Alexis's house to record an episode there, or to Mama and Papa Bezos' house. Who knows?
We could do some episodes
Yeah,
at the Bezos. That'd be
yeah,
fun. All right,
cool.
man.
This
This
was
is
fun.
episode 71 of the Miami Tech Pod. Thanks for listening, and we will be with you next week for some exciting episodes. Take care.